welcome. Before we get started tonight, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware. If you could please leave your microphone on mute as we navigate through the presentation. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Let's get started. My name is Andrea Warren, and again, thank you for joining the Housing and Community Development Department's virtual meeting on the Draft Action Plan for Disaster Recovery, the 2024 Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. The agenda for today's meeting includes speaker introduction, director's opening remarks, presentation, public hearing, Q&A segment, and closing remarks. If you need a Spanish translator for this meeting, call in audio at 1936-755-1521, and the user ID is 716-289-504. Let's say that again, 716-289-504
Okay,
pound.
thank you. You got it.
Or to join us on Microsoft Teams, please use the link https://bit.ly/dr2024-ph25s. If you have any questions that you would like to have addressed during the question and answer segment, please type them in the chat. We will start with opening remarks from Director Nichols. Then I will take you through the presentation. Then Alan Issa will join us to moderate the public hearing segment of this meeting where you can provide your comments. This will be followed by the question and answer segment with Director Nichols. Now I would like to introduce the Housing and Community Development Department Director Mike Nichols. Director Nichols.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Andrea. Thank you very much for organizing this very important meeting. Thank you to our staff who spent a great deal of time putting these plans together and organizing the meeting. I am the City of Houston Housing and Community Development Department Director, and my name is Mike Nichols. And we are thrilled to have you join us today for our third and final virtual community meeting. Your voice, your questions, your comments play a very important role in shaping the future of Houston's recovery and resilience efforts. The mission of our department, the mission of the Housing and Community Development Department is to make investments that serve Houstonians' housing and community development needs and build a more equitable city by creating safe, resilient homes and vibrant, healthy communities where all residents can thrive. I want to make a very important announcement before we get too far in this discussion. I hope that many of you know that earlier today, Mayor John Whitmire announced that the city will amend its draft action plan to include a $50 million allocation specifically to support affordable housing, repairs, and reconstruction for individuals impacted by the disasters in 2024. That's the Derecho, Hurricane Beryl, and the Kingwood floods. It's important to emphasize that this change is a direct result of the feedback that we in our department and the mayor received from community members and stakeholders like you. Your voices are being heard, and this adjustment was directed by the mayor and supported 100% by this department and reflects our ongoing commitment to being responsive and to having responsive and inclusive planning. You know, many times we feel like maybe we're not being heard by our government leaders, but I will say clearly that Mayor Whitmire and his administration have listened carefully to the comments. I do want you to note that these updates are not reflected in today's presentation of the city's draft action plan for disaster recovery in response to the 2024 Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. So you will not see this $50 million amendment, but we will talk about it as we go through the presentation. As we begin, it's important to understand the context behind this action plan. The 2024 Derecho and Hurricane Beryl revealed and intensified existing challenges in the city's disaster preparedness and response systems. Through our assessments, we identified several critical capability gaps, including one, the need for emergency power generation to support critical public facilities. Two, we needed to strengthen disaster response and public safety operations. And that includes more ambulances, more highway water vehicles, and more opportunities to more planning and work communications to deal with public safety during a disaster. We need improved pre-disaster vegetation management. One of the things we recognize is that we needed our streets cleared, our parks cleared, our bikeways cleared more efficiently, and we needed to do that by using pre-disaster vegetation management. And we needed more effective post-disaster debris removal operations. During these disasters, we found our trucks full of debris and having difficulty finding a place to place this debris. Now, with these findings, we will have more adequate debris management and areas to place this debris, to move more quickly, to clear our streets more quickly, to make sure our parks and our buildings are usable more quickly. To help address these challenges, Congress made a direct allocation of federal funding to the city of Houston. This direct allocation allows for more efficient and targeted deployment of recovery resources. And our draft action plan outlines how we intend to use this funding to strengthen preparedness and build long-term resilience across all the communities in Houston. I want to note here that we're deeply appreciative of the HUD funding. They gave us most of the funding that we requested, and they gave it to the city of Houston directly rather than through other entities. This reimbursement grant is very important to us, and the city must spend this funding on eligible activities and then seek reimbursement for HUD for qualifying expenditures. Again, I think when we read in the paper that the city received $314 million in recovery, we think we got a big check. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. The way it works is that we have to have an action plan that is approved by HUD. And then we have to implement that action plan, making sure we meet all the federal guidelines. As we implement that plan, we use city money to implement this recovery. And then we go back to HUD, and if we've done everything well and we've had qualifying expenditures, the city is reimbursed for these expenditures. Mayor Whitmire and city leadership are focused on investments that could address the most widespread impacts from the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. Examples of critical investments include backup power for critical public facilities, such as drinking water, sewer systems. Again, think about what happens when we lose power. Our drinking water could become impossible to use. Our sewer system could overflow. We could be required to have widespread boil water notices. This would be terrible. And this plan does something to overcome those issues. Our fire stations, we found that many of our fire stations had no generators. And these backup power means that we can ensure these operations can remain up and running in times of heightened need. We found that our multi-service centers and many of our libraries that are used for times when there's no power, to use for people who are in their homes stuck with no ability to recharge their oxygen needs and other important items, when they need cooling centers. But what this plan does, it provides greater access to these facilities during disasters and they can serve as heat cooling and heating centers, charging stations, and resource distribution points. We found that we need more emergency preparedness and mitigation improvement. And as I spoke of before, we need additional debris repositories and vegetation management. Speed recovery, speed people to getting back to the hospital, to work. We need this important work. Public services. I don't need to tell you that we have a homelessness issue in Houston. And we have funding available in this plan to address homelessness by providing services such as outreach, case management, and supportive housing. These investments help shield residents from future disaster impact. And it really makes sure that our most vulnerable residents do not end up in the hospital and do not end up incapacitated as a result of bad weather. It's important to understand that this is a plan that helps as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, and meeting the urgent needs as well as possible. Further, we need your input. And I want to underscore that we're still in the draft planning phase. This is where it's tough, and it's sometimes disappointing that there's huge needs and a limited amount of money. $314 million is a lot of money. We're fortunate to have it in comparison to other cities, counties, and states. However, we're a big city with a lot of needs. When recovery needs exceed funding available, as they often do, determining how to allocate limited fund resources becomes a difficult yet necessary task. What you saw with Mayor Whitmire's decision to move $50 million of funding from these other areas to housing needs is real leadership. In addition to community input and needs assessment, several factors have guided our decision making. Let's talk a little bit about history. The city's disaster recovery efforts from 2008 through 2021 have focused heavily on housing. In fact, more than 80% of our previous federal allocations, totaling in excess of $775 million, were dedicated to housing-related programs. That's housing repair, housing reconstruction, multifamily housing development, and multifamily housing repair. While housing remains a top priority, one key lesson from the most recent disasters is we cannot overlook the city's own capacity to respond and recover effectively. Without these investments in our city's infrastructure and disaster operations, every resident, you and me, and every other resident, remain at risk. Our approach today considers both direct community needs and systemic improvements that benefit the city as a whole. It's important to recognize and put into context the housing outlook for Houston. The city of Houston is taking a strategic approach to disaster recovery while continuing to advance housing recovery and access to other targeted programs. Housing continues to be a foundational element of the city of Houston's long-term recovery strategy. In addition to the $50 million that Mayor Whitmire has put into this plan, over the next 5 years, we expect nearly $106 million from our regular federal funding streams, including annual CDBG and home allocations to support our housing initiatives. In addition, we were proud partners with the Houston Housing Authority to help secure a $50 million Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant. This funding will support the redevelopment of CUNY homes and drive investment in the surrounding Third Ward community. That grant is a very difficult grant to obtain And it was a really terrific work by some of our partners at the Housing Authority and by the administration. Secondly, it's very important to know we're kicking off 2 programs over the next 30 days that are funded by other disasters. Winter Storm Uri, Disasters 2021, has a new single-family repair program in which over $40 million will be committed starting the next 30 days. Over $40 million is committed to support homeowners impacted by the 2021 storm through repair, rehabilitation, or reimbursement options. I know that's taken a long time to get this done. Many people were helped earlier by FEMA and insurance, but those who weren't are going to be eligible for these repairs, rehabilitation, and reimbursement options. Again, that's $40 million. From disaster 17, the Harvey hurricane, we found some more money in the Homebuyer Assistance Program 2.0, and this program will deploy approximately $19 million to help Houstonians living in Houston during Hurricane Harvey to achieve home ownership. Again, that program is also being kicked off in the next 30 days. These are exciting programs that will bring $59 million to Houstonians for home ownership and home repair, in addition to the $50 million that DR 24 will bring, in addition to the $106 million that we bring over the next couple of years from the federal government. As we move forward, we'll continue identifying strategic opportunities to collaborate and leverage additional funding. Our goals remain the same: to prioritize housing needs while maximizing every federal dollar and every city dollar and every tax dollar for the greatest impact. I know this is important to many people, and I look forward to your comments. I'll now pass this back to Andrea, who will walk us through more detail on the 2024 disasters and their impact on our recovery strategy. And then we look forward to your comments and questions.
Thank you, Director Nichols. Let's get started with the presentation. In 2024, Houston experienced 2 major disasters that significantly impacted our communities. These events tested our systems, our infrastructure, and our communities, but they also strengthened our commitment to resilience and recovery. On May 16th and 17th of 2024, a powerful straight-line windstorm, also called a derecho, struck the city. The storm, which included wind gusts exceeding 100 miles per hour, knocked down power poles, shattered windows and skyscrapers, and left nearly 1 million residents and businesses without power. Nearly 555,000 were still without electricity 24 hours later. Many public services, schools, businesses experienced temporary closures. Tragically, 8 people's lives were lost. Hurricane Beryl, a Category 1 storm, hit Houston from July the 7th through the 9th, 2024, causing severe flooding and property damage. Hurricane Beryl caused widespread damage to Houston's power infrastructure, leading to over 2.7 million people being without power. These outages impacted hospitals, schools, and businesses, with some residents going without power for more than 12 days in sweltering heat, which led to at least 7 deaths attributed to heat stroke. The storm also toppled transmission lines, uprooted trees, and snapped branches, causing extensive damage to power lines and utility poles. Let's review the disaster declaration process. Both the 2024 Derecho and Hurricane Beryl received a presidential disaster declaration. These maps indicate the areas impacted by the respective disaster and the types of assistance available by FEMA. As we look at these images, we can see the devastating impact these storms had on our city. Here are other examples of devastating impact from the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. In the wake of recent natural disasters like the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl, communities across the region have not only been tested by the strength of these storms, but also by the scale of the damage. Infrastructure was compromised and essential services were disrupted. Disasters can expose vulnerabilities, but they also create opportunities to transform and become more resilient. Before we talk about the allocation, let's review the disaster recovery phases. Immediate response focuses on action to save lives, protect property, address immediate needs. This includes, search and rescue, medical care, providing emergency shelter, food, and water, assessing damage, and restoring critical services. Short-term response begins once the immediate crisis has stabilized, and it includes debris removal, temporary housing, and restoring essential community functions. Long-term recovery is more extensive. It involves repairing infrastructure, supporting displaced families, rebuilding homes, and restoring the local economy. Finally, mitigation is an ongoing effort to reduce future risk. This includes strengthening our building codes, investing in resilient infrastructure, and helping communities prepare for future disasters. CDBG-DR funding is provided after a presidentially declared disaster and appropriated by Congress. It is administered by HUD to support long-term recovery efforts and build resilience in affected communities. On January 16, 2025, HUD announced new allocations of the Community Development Block Grant, Disaster Recovery, or CDBG-DR, for disasters that occurred in 2023 and 2024. The city will receive a direct allocation of $314.6 million from HUD to support local disaster recovery and resilience efforts following the 2024 Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. To receive the CDBG-DR 24 funding allocated to the City of Houston, there are several requirements. Funding must be spent in the most impacted and distressed areas, or MID. The entire City of Houston has been deemed a MID by HUD. 70% of all activities must provide benefit to low and moderate income individuals. Activities must address the impact of the disaster, either directly or indirectly. HUD also refers to this requirement as tieback, where all activities except for mitigation must tie back to the impacts of the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. Finally, activities must be eligible under CDBG. Eligible activities include planning, administration, housing, infrastructure, public services, economic revitalization, and mitigation. Let's review the application requirements. To assess CDBG-DR funding, HUD requires grantees like the City of Houston to follow a prescribed application process. This ensures that recovery plans are comprehensive, transparent, and aligned with federal guidelines. HUD also sets strict timelines for submission of the action plan and related documents, which include how to guide the city and to begin implementing recovery programs and projects. Key milestones and deadline dates associated with the application process are as followed. The universal notice was issued on January 8, 2025, providing new guidance on the application development and the submission process for disaster recovery funding. Federal Register was issued on January 16, 2025, which provided details about the city's allocation of disaster recovery funding for the 2024 disasters. The city submitted a request for extension on March 6, 2025, which was approved on the same day. HUD was in the process of reviewing or further revising guidance that would impact the application process and the action plan for disaster recovery content. The city wanted to ensure there was access to all available resources and sought additional time as a result. A revised universal notice memo was issued on March 19, 2025. This changed various elements of the application process timeline and action plan requirements. The city received HUD technical assistance from the local field office and HUD disaster recovery staff on March the 24th and 25th of 2025. A proposed budget was presented at the City of Houston Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting on June the 3rd, 2025. As required, the city's application for disaster recovery funding must have City Council approval prior to the submission to HUD. This item is anticipated to be presented to the City Council on June 25th, 2025. The current HUD submission deadline, according to the extension the city received on March the 6th, is July the 20th, 2025. Once the action plan is submitted to HUD, HUD will have 45 days to review and approve it by September the 3rd, 2025.
Andre, at the risk of making a mistake, can we go back to the slide for one moment?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, Director Nichols.
As we discussed this morning, the mayor made a decision to change the budget, which we support 100%, and that has changed the schedule just a tiny bit. We think we need to go back to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and we're thinking it will be in early July, and then we'll be back to the City Council instead of June 25. We think it'll be in later July, like the 23rd, but we will announce this publicly. So these dates will change with the new amendments that we have in place.
Behind, I used to beat it.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Nichols. I appreciate that. Now we will go on to discuss the action plan for disaster recovery with the phases. These dates are also a part of the CDBG-DR grant process and follows that allows for 3 key phases. Phase 1 includes the development of the action plan for disaster recovery. The City of Houston received an extension and must submit the action plan for disaster recovery by July the 20th, 2025. During Phase 2, grantees must submit the documentation for the certification of financial controls and procurement processes and adequate procedures for grant management within 45 days of submission of the final action plan on July the 20th, which would be September the 3rd, 2025. During Phase 3, grantees must create and finalize policies and procedures depending on the program type. At 1 year or 18 months from the applicability date, January 21st, 2026, unless an extension is granted. Now let's discuss the required components of the action plan itself. There is the executive summary, the unmet needs assessment, the mitigation needs assessment, the grantee's proposed use of funds and detailed grant budget, which shows how resources will be allocated, information on the distribution of funds and specific program details, general information about the city's recovery efforts. The citizen participation plan is included and outlines how the public is involved through engagement, comments, public hearings, and how citizen complaints are handled. In addition, procedures for modifications to the action plan as needs evolve are included. Finally, the plan includes requirements for the ongoing performance reports to track our progress. Now that we reviewed the plan requirements, let's move on to the proposed budget and the activities. But before we take a look at the proposed budget, it's important to note the HUD threshold requirements that must be considered. For CDBG-DR grants, no more than 5% of the total allocation can be budgeted towards administration. 15% of the total allocation can be budgeted towards planning. The city has only allocated 0.06% for planning. 15% of the total allocation can be budgeted towards public services. The city has budgeted more than 15% for public services and will be seeking a waiver from HUD. Now, let's discuss the disaster recovery budget. This slide shows the proposed allocation of CDBG-DR funds totaling just over $314 million strategically invested across key recovery and resilience priorities. $200,000 is budgeted for planning activities. Costs may include staff time associated with assessing impacts from these disasters, conducting needs assessments, fulfilling citizen engagement requirements, and developing the action plan for disaster recovery and related documents. $15.7 million is budgeted for administration. Costs may include staff time and overhead related to the general management, oversight, coordination, and the implementation of CDBG-DR grant, as well as costs for other administrative services performed under third-party contracts or agreements, such as general legal services, accounting services, and audit services. $151.3 million is budgeted for Power Generation Resilience Program. Costs may include engineering, design services, purchase and installation of natural gas generators, related modifications to facility infrastructure, including resilient platform construction, establishing power connection, switching mechanisms, and other on-site specific modifications and activity delivery. $8.8 million is budgeted for FEMA Public Assistance Local Cost Share. Costs may include local costs for CDBG-DR eligible FEMA Public Assistance approved projects and activity delivery. The Emergency Response Public Safety Program is budgeted for $56.5 million, and costs under this program may include the purchase of emergency response and public safety equipment such as ambulances and high water vehicles and mobile communications equipment and activity delivery. $41 million is budgeted for a homeless services program to support the city's goal to expand outreach, shelter, streamline housing access for homeless, to move individuals experiencing homelessness into housing and supportive services. $32.8 million is budgeted for debris repository acquisition and development project. Costs for this project include land acquisition, site preparation, related construction or modifications, security measures, and activity delivery. Lastly, $8.25 billion is budgeted for a vegetation management and debris removal program. Costs may include purchasing vegetation management, debris removal equipment and vehicles, vegetation management, debris removal, public services, and activity delivery. These amounts may change and may be added to the housing programs. Please be advised. Now, let's move on to public engagement. Your voice helps shape our resilience and recovery efforts. Let's walk through different ways you can participate. The City of Houston is committed to a transparent and inclusive recovery planning process. Our resident and agency survey is open. It's open today, and we encourage everyone to share their experiences and their insights. To participate in our resident or agency survey, you can scan the QR code displayed here. If you don't have access to a phone, no problem. The survey is also available online at our website at www.houstontx.gov/hcdrecovery/public-hearing/. Now we'd like to open the floor for your comments. This public hearing segment is your opportunity to share feedback on today's presentation and help shape recovery efforts moving forward. Now I'd like to turn things over to Alan Issa, who will be moderating the public hearing session. He will guide us and help ensure everyone has a chance to be heard. Alan?
Great. Thank you, Andrea, for a great presentation. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alan Issa, and it is now time to begin the public hearing segment of the agenda. This is your opportunity to provide your public comments to us, and we look forward to hearing from you all. Next slide. Before we begin, I would like to go over some ground rules. First, when you are called to speak, please state your first and last name for the record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to provide their public comment. There will be a countdown timer on the screen to assist you with the timing. Yielding time to another person will not be allowed. I also want to note that the testimony is recorded and transcribed. Also, please keep in mind that this is not a Q&A session. There will be a Q&A session after this segment, so please keep this session to public comments only. Lastly, summaries with responses will be included as part of our final action plan submission to HUD. For those of you on Teams who would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon either at the top of your screen next to your name or in the participants section. For those on the phone, I will call you after the first wave of comments have been made. Finally, I will call the names of the people I see in the order that I see them. Once again, we kindly request that each commentator state their first and last name for the record and provide a public comment on the draft action plan for disaster recovery 2024. Now let us begin. If you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand icon at this time. Great, thank you. First speaker will be Chris Jenkins. Please unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Yes, good evening. My name is Christopher Jenkins. I'm a native Houstonian. I'm from Acres Home, but I recently reside on the South Side for like not even 2 years yet. But I'm a community organizer. I'm a CEO and founder of Feed Your Hood organization, and I'm on CLT at Texas Organizing Project. And so from my experience as a community organizer and a union member with a trade and many skills in computer since '88, just helping build an infrastructure around the city, working with many different organizations all across the city. From United Way to GWAM to Houston Area Urban League. I've been AFL-CIO. I started Teamsters in '98. I helped a lot with summer youth programs when I was younger, among other different things, and I'm very involved in ministry. So to see a lot of things going on in the city right now, I'm very disappointed in the leadership with the city in terms of challenging the government about, how serious this could be. I don't expect everybody to believe in global warming, but knowing my trade, if that rebar heats up, it gets really hot. And if it gets cold, it gets really cold, because it is still. I just, kind of like use, my basic skills in sense that if something's heating up, that's not good, and then give off gases, and it can cause people to get sick. We deal with cancer clusters. We deal with food deserts from a community that I was raised and born in when we had stores all around. These are some of the things I addressed with the past Congress people in my district that passed away because that's what I was working on, dealing with cancer clusters, the Fight for 15, and eliminating food deserts. And so for us not to be creative and innovative as a tech prep student out of Alden Independent School District and learning DOS and computer systems and different ways of dealing with business and just knowing where we come from. We got NASA, we got the medical center, we got the port. We have all these magnificent things around us out the city and people just dumping stuff like waste management, EPA not, doing their job, FEMA letting us down. You understand what I'm saying? Like it costs a lot to build a city up with this magnitude. They all have failed. HUD has failed. They are not professionals on construction and different things like that. They're not certified. Now they might have some people that's retired and working there, but I'm talking about them as an entity, consulting in a collaborative and collective way, and spending their time with engineers and architects to understand how much it really, really costs. We passed the HID bond, Metro, and ACC, billion-dollar bonds some years ago. They steady asking for money, but they don't even hire local people. They don't get these young folks engaged in trades. We got to get people from the outside doing freezes and natural disasters, electricians and plumbers. This is not making sense. We're not reinvesting back in the people, and it makes no sense at all. They're spending money on stuff. We should learn a long time ago when you buy stuff, it probably ain't going to last. And not to trust people that's been doing it for a very long time. They structure still stand. I haven't built a database server website over 10 years. No bottlenecks, no breaches, no hacks. I had to configure anything. I keep contingency and retention. So I'm not understanding why, if we're in a city like that, one of the largest cities, how they just feel like it's gonna just give us this and give us that. Like where are they getting their data information from? to know how to deal with resilience and retention. I would really like to know that, like who's specializing and saying that these people are worth this and that.
Mr. Chen,
Like, I want the
time is
city
up.
to challenge that. Yes, sir. I want the city to challenge the federal government. What's our retention looking like?
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Pamela Davis, if you'd like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Davis Duck. I am a member leader with the Metropolitan Organization, and my institution is First Metropolitan. First of all, I would like to thank the mayor for the $50 million that was decided today for home repairs. I want to let you know that the Saturday after Beryl, the Metropolitan Organization sent out text surveys to 100,000, people. Within 48 hours, we received 4,500 responses. Roughly, those people said that they had damage, significant damage. We referred these individuals to the United Way, to the Beryl Disaster Fund or Greater Recovery Fund. Only 400 homes were repaired. Therefore, there is still an unmet need. So we are asking for, instead of the 30 million, for the multi-dwelling to be switched to single dwelling. And the reason is that repairing single-family homes prevents homelessness. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Shanza Branch, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment. Shanza Branch.
Hi, my name is Shanza Branch, and I live in the northeast part of Houston. I have lived through many storms, including Harvey, Ike, and now Hurricane Beryl, and I can't forget the tornadoes. I believe the city of Houston should prioritize programs that support the recovery efforts of community members, like home repair, because my house is still have a leak in it and cracks and crevices from the storm, and street infrastructure improvements, and should cut the programs that are not responding to the direct disaster recovery needs, like purchasing cop cars and ambulances and buying gas generators for public facilities that are not used for mass sheltering during a storm. The current budget of these disaster recovery funds do not reflect the needs of Houstonians who are still recovering after Hurricane Beryl and the Derecho. We know homes need to be fixed. We know people will be homeless if they cannot repair their homes. It is that the plan of the Whitmire administration to make elders and disabled people homeless so they can continue funding homeless initiatives. The public safety initiative outlined in the action plan are not assisting with damages related to Hurricane Beryl. Putting more money into police budget will not help us during a disaster. The police are not the ones who should be responding to disasters. It should be public works and solid waste. But the city has cut their budgets to give more money to the police department, and we are seeing the same patterns with this federal funding. Mitigation and preparation for the public safety during disaster events should fund mobility to multi-service centers and libraries that should be fully operational before a storm, not after the storm, not after the harm has been done and people are scrambling to evacuate. What we really need is neighborhood resilience measures, like hardening of our street drainage. If the streets didn't flood, we wouldn't need to evacuate our homes. I also do not agree with the purchasing of natural gas generators. We should be caring about climate change as we have seen hurricanes and storms intensify. We need to start supporting clean energy initiatives over utilizing natural gas. Any generators purchased should be solar generators or utilize other clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Noelle Dennison, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment. Noelle Dennison.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. I was trying to unmute. Thank you so much for your patience. My name is Noelle Dennison. I am a leader with the Metropolitan Organization, and I live in West Houston. And I am commenting on our appreciation for the fact that the mayor has listened to his community and has responded by including $50 million in housing repair. But we think additional changes need to be made. We think that $100 million needs to go into home repair, to repair homes of vulnerable families. And we think this additional funding from the $50 million that Mayor Whitmire has responded with, this additional funding can come from these items: the Power Generation Resiliency Program. We support keeping the funding at multi-service centers and water facilities, but we don't believe that generators are needed at every fire station and other city facilities. We believe some funding can come from emergency response vehicles, that we should cut $56.5 million from that area of the plan and use that money for home repair projects. So cutting emergency response vehicles from this plan. We believe that for the homeless program, that of the 41 million, we can cut 20 million and put that additional funding into repairing homes of people who, if their homes are not repaired, will be homeless. So in that sense, we are preventing homelessness. We support strongly 100 million to go into this plan for home repair, to repair homes of families who will have nowhere to live, no safe and secure housing without home repair. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Dee, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment. Dee, D-E-E, Dee.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Dee Adira Ariano. You can also say Dee. I'm with Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. Following Derecho and Beryl, we did observe many Houstonians who were in great need of both short-term shelters that were not available immediately after the storms. In addition to that, those short-term shelters, which included the Red Cross, were not available for long-term needs. And so there is a big need for long-term housing. I disagree with the speaker earlier on taking homeless services away and cutting those budgets, because in the east end of Houston, we have a tremendous need for unhoused populations, especially given that a Greyhound bus has now been moved into the area, compounding the need for unhoused populations in the east end of Houston. So I deeply advocate for additional services for unhoused populations, as well as language access following Beryl and Derecho and this year's hurricanes. As we saw, there was a great need for people who are non-English speakers to be able to navigate both FEMA and local services, both of which were not readily available in Spanish. And if they were, people did not have access to Wi-Fi or internet services or computers or devices to be able to fill out those applications. I will leave my comment at that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Neil Aquino, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Great, thank you. My name's Neil Aquino with the Houston Democracy Project. I'd first like to advocate for money for West Gray. It provides a unique service citywide, and everything we can do to strengthen West Gray. I want to talk about the emergency vehicle funding. The police and fire are already getting 60% of our budget. Mayor Whitmire at council today said that Governor Abbott was going to improve 250 more police cars. He didn't really get into how that impacted this plan. He said that Josh Sanders from the mayor's office, who I see is on this call, will be briefing council soon, and so hopefully there'll be some clarification. In city budget hearings recently, there were questions: will the police and fire be subject to the same demand for efficiencies that other departments are being forced to do? I thought that the answers and replies were pretty timid that actually would be happening. The police and the fire unions, okay, they got their money. They got their money with, frankly, to me, little concern for the larger welfare of the city. These politically powerful unions now should help us. The police and fire unions have no problem going to the press, going to Governor Abbott, Dan Patrick, and complaining about things that we're doing here. Why don't they act now to help our city? I don't want to live in something that's just a giant police department and a giant fire department. I ask that the emergency vehicle funding be stripped as much as possible. In council session a few weeks ago, Councilmember Martinez, who often is allied with the mayor, said that, you can have these vehicles, but we really need the vegetation management because these vehicles need to be able to get around. You have people who have supported the police and fire contracts who seem wary of this amount of funding. I would ask the mayor's representatives here and the mayor to call Doug Griffith, call Marty Langton, say, look, you got what you wanted. Okay, the city's broke. You know it is. All of this money is all it's all one pool. It's all one giant pool of money. And I would ask those who have gotten the largest stake of that giant pool of money, people who have politically helped Mayor Whitmire and Mayor Whitmire who has strongly supported it, to now please step up and help us out, and that we have this funding serve other than emergency vehicles, please. And let's find the efficiencies and the political support elsewhere rather than robbing from urgently needed services. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Situka Jeremiah, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Yes, hello. Thank you for this invaluable opportunity to speak about the draft action plan for disaster recovery, dealing with the 2024 Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. My name is Jeremiah Situka. I'm a Houstonian. I'm a teacher in a school district in Greater Houston. I live at the intersection of East End and Fifth Ward. My family had to evacuate during the Derecho, and I do ministry as a pastor at Pinecrest Presbyterian Church, which was one of many places of worship that were deeply affected by both storms. As we collectively work towards rebuilding our city, it is crucial that our recovery plan is truly comprehensive and equitable, reaching every pillar of our community. I'm thankful for the mayor for allocating, I believe it is $50 million to housing just today. So my comments today will then focus on ensuring places of worship, which serve as vital community anchors, are fully considered in our recovery efforts. First, I must highlight the significant concern that this plan, as currently drafted, does not adequately consider houses of worship affected by both the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl for direct property damage assistance. According to this plan, there are primary categories under which the direct property repair for non-city owned entities would typically fall. However, the plan explicitly states that the city's prioritization is for long-needed infrastructure upgrades over housing and economic revitalization. Second, the related issue is of the absence of mechanisms for places of worship to receive assistance for debris removal, particularly where private property intersects city areas. I understand that could be a gray area, but this plan's current vegetation and management debris removal program, as described, focused on public infrastructure and citywide efforts. So our places of worship have often had to set up immediately for disaster, and yet they're bearing the significant cost of clearing storm-generated debris and properties and impact public access. Those finances usually fall on us to clear, and then there's no sort of reimbursement program for that. Finally, I want to offer a strong recommendation regarding the homeless service program. I appreciate its effort. I hope that it can grow, but also, particularly, I hope that it includes the fact that there are already potentially eligible service programs that it provides. So please streamline the process, the application process, and increase the eligibility to include other services that places of worship conduct. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Elaine Morales, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Thank you. My name is Elaine Morales, resident of Eastwood in District I. I'm here because the drastic lack of investment in housing in this plan is deeply concerning. Despite identifying housing as the top unmet need and the opportunity to leverage the county's allocation of over $60 million to advance housing recovery in the region, CDBGDR is one of the few funding sources focused on people-centered recovery. Its core purpose is to address long-term recovery needs with a strong emphasis on low and moderate income families. I wish we had seen this purpose prioritized in this plan. Without investment in housing, the ripple effects will be felt throughout our communities. Disaster case managers, which the state already spent millions on, will have an even harder time connecting survivors from these two disasters to recovery resources. On the flip side, the plan allocates over $200 million to infrastructure, while the city identified only about $7 million in unmet infrastructure need. Infrastructure and mitigation are critical in a city that floods, but the items included in this allocation are not about that and should be funded through other sources. I support investments that directly help residents in a crisis, like the generators for multi-service centers that can serve as cooling and heating hubs, but using CDBGDR for items like large purchases of public safety vehicles, typically covered by city operational budgets, diverts funding away from where it's more urgently needed: housing and the drainage infrastructure that protects what? Housing. Part of this plan does target homelessness, but the root causes of homelessness are economic hardship and a lack of affordable housing. We urgently need more housing that is affordable to families earning under 60% of area median income. When we repair homes, build affordable housing units, and preserve what exists, we keep people housed and strengthen long-term stability. No one can say that we have enough money for housing with this level of unmet need that doesn't even consider the accumulated unmet need from previous disasters or addresses our aging housing stock or our lack of deeply affordable housing units. Some may argue that housing programs are too complex or slow to spend down, but that's not a reason to underfund housing. That's a governance issue. The city must build the systems that are needed to run these programs equitably and effectively. This money offers you the opportunity to figure that out. I strongly urge the city to reallocate at least $100 million from items that don't meet the purpose of these funds, that would still leave hundreds of millions for essential infrastructure, while helping achieve over 1,000 home repairs that help people fully recover or get weatherization ready, over 1,200 fortified roofs that protect households against future storms, and at least 100 new or rehab affordable rental units, acknowledging that half of Houstonians are renters. These outcomes directly addresses the largest unmet need and mitigates the compounding effects of disasters that continue putting families and this city at risk.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Layla Khalili, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Layla Khalili. I live in the Spring Branch neighborhood of District A. I'm going to keep this brief. I want to echo everything that Elaine Morales, the speaker before me, just said. I also want to add that going from $0 to $50 million is a start, but that number needs to be much higher. As it relates to affordable housing, there's a huge unmet need for affordable housing in Houston. The city's own reports say that $230 million is needed to repair homes damaged by these storms. So like everyone else who has spoken so far, I'm asking that this be raised to at least $100 million, knowing that this is still not going to be enough to meet that need. I also ask that disaster survivors have a central role in the design and oversight of disaster recovery programs, that is absolutely crucial. I also do not think that this money should be used for public safety vehicles. I think that should come out of those operating budgets. And I'd also like to add that this public comment period is not sufficient. Hosting 3 virtual workshops, 2 of which were in the middle of the workday, does not ensure that Houstonians are able to participate. The community engagement and outreach component could and should have been much more robust. And I want to emphasize this is an accessibility issue. Even the access code to this meeting in Spanish was only communicated in English. And so if you really want to include the public in giving feedback on how disaster recovery dollars should be spent, then there's a lot more that can and should be done. And I'm sure there's no shortage of folks on this call or in the communities that you all work with that could give you feedback on how to make this more accessible in language, in person, to make sure that you're going out directly into the communities that are most impacted, at those community centers, at those houses of worship, at the hub homes that people have created to keep their community safe. I think it's just a signal that we are not really being considered or included, that the most impacted people in the city are not being included in this process, because you need to have access to the internet and a computer to even participate in this, let alone know how to navigate this system. So I do encourage folks to have more meetings. Do not let this be the last one, and spend some time directly in the community with those impacted. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Super Neighborhood 45, Pastor Deb, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Blessings. I'm Zelma Friends, Pastor Deb Benario Martin. I'm a native Houstonian, 6th generation Texan, and a District H resident, currently acting president of Super Neighborhood 45 Northside Northline. His Honor's $50 million adjustment is appreciated. Unlike developer incentives and amenities, community is something created by people. Working with resident and faith groups presents you a unique opportunity to address and reimagine undesirable areas of our city through our eyes. Residents in underserved areas report years of city and county inability to meet long-standing need. To address disaster trauma and promote healing, I ask officials to declare a public coping to hoping declaration today to so many forgotten residents, allowing us to celebrate other areas addressed before ours. Decreasing competition between needy areas would offer a modest down payment on future commitment. We elect officials to protect, inspect, and improve neighborhoods. Underserved deserts with long-standing concern impact our quality of life and social determinants of health. In between complete communities and livable places, we find incomplete communities and unlivable places. Instead of being made to compete and fight over crumbs, residents from each underserved area should be invited to join a problem-solving working group. Resilience runs low in underserved neighborhoods from frequent and intensified disaster, but solutions arise from within. Impacted residents are committed to explore issues and create deficiency plans that advance reparative recommendation. Parent neighborhood-driven outreach and engagement with city-county aligned initiatives is my prescription to prevent duplications and gaps, achieving neighborhood-level impact. As grassroots leaders, finally, I must say, we need better access to engage with elected officials who are capable of producing viable solutions that alleviate community distress within manageable timeframes. I thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comment, Pastor Deb. Next up, Michael G. Davis, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Absolutely. I would like to first thank for the opportunity to participate in this meeting today. I am the president of the Houston Black Real Estate Association, one of the oldest trade associations in the United States, as well as the co-chair of the governmental advisory group, of governmental affairs advisory group for the Houston Association of Realtors, 20-year real estate professional. And through my career, I've noticed, and we can all agree, the great need of affordable housing in this great city that we all love. I do understand and respect the fact that everybody that's on this call, those that work for the city of Houston, those that are in legislature, even our mayor of our city, that we all care about our city. And the one thing that I'm just asking for us to do is for us to just use common sense as we evaluate what's going on with the situations that took place when it came to the Derecho and when it came to Hurricane Beryl. I can appreciate the process that we went through to determine the need. We did an assessment. And based on that assessment, it was determined where the largest unmet need was left after these two storms. And we saw that unmet need, the largest pieces being housing, which an unmet need of $229 million, and economic revitalization, which was $186 million. To me, I don't understand how we can do an assessment that's identified where the need is, where we should best position the funding, but then completely ignore the assessment and distribute and allocate the funds in other places where the assessment didn't say that's where the need was. And do it in such a fashion where we're not only not meeting where the need has been determined, it's been a long-lasting need, and now we have an opportunity to do something about it, and we have an opportunity to do something about it the right way, and we're just choosing not to do it. And I don't understand that. So what I would ask is that the city council take all the things that we've heard today in consideration, to take the assessment in consideration, which told us where the need was, and let's reallocate these funds according to what the assessment said. Everybody's saying 100 million towards housing. I say based off of the percentages that we've identified in the assessment, let's use those percentages and determine what percentage of the 314 million needs to be given towards housing, as well as what percentage needs to be given to some of the areas that was identified in the assessment. Again, Michael Davis, president of the Houston Black Real Estate Association, Governmental Affairs Advisory Group. This is something that we work on a consistent basis. And now's the time for the city of Houston to step up and do what's right with these funds that we've been allocated, put them where the need has been identified through the measures that we've determined to assess where the need has been. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Eileen Edmonds, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Hi, my name is Eileen Edmonds. I wanted to advocate for the Metropolitan Multi-Service Center. It's in, I think, Councilmember Cameron's district, but it's the hub for people with disabilities in the city of Houston. When there are emergencies, they look for assistance from the facility. So I do support funds being used to assist in multi-service centers throughout the city of Houston. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Carolyn Rivera, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment. Carolyn Rivera. Okay, we will come back to you. Next up, Donna Rickenbach, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Thank you. My name is Donna Rickenbacker. My company develops affordable multifamily housing developments funded through the 9% housing tax credit program that's administered by TDHCA. I want to thank Mayor Whitmire and the Houston Housing Department led by Mike Nichols and their willingness to amend the draft action plan and move much needed funds to housing. However, I do agree with several speakers that it's not enough. I very much agree with Ellen, I think her name was Ellen Morales, that homelessness is in part a result of the lack of quality affordable housing. My final thought is for the housing department and the mayor to recognize that the 9% funded affordable housing developments not only provide quality housing for our lowest income households, but the owners are required to set aside a certain percentage of housing for homeless residents. So of those funds that are currently set aside for homeless housing, I hope that these funds can be additionally utilized in ready to proceed affordable housing developments. Again, I thank you all very much for all that you all have been doing to support housing. across the city of Houston. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Rolando Perez. If you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Yes, good afternoon. Again, my name is Rolando Perez. I'm a resident of District H and also a member of the Northeast Action Collective. I'm going to try to be short and brief. Whatever everyone is saying is exactly correct. Yes, apparently the mayor, they've now, are putting 50 million towards housing and repairs. Yes, it's not enough. That is, I believe, after the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl, the study came out to at least around $200 million or more in property damage. So 50 million is only a quarter of what's needed. And this money is to be used for that, for housing and repairing homes, not purchasing emergency vehicles. If that's what the city needed, then the mayor and city council should have included that in their budget. And when they gave the HFD and HPD these large contracts, if they knew, and apparently they knew that they needed vehicles, then they should have lowered the raises for both those departments and included the money for these vehicles that were needed. This money is supposed to be used for the community to help residents repair their homes after disasters, not purchase emergency vehicles. That's not what this money is intended for. That is why Mayor Whitmire had to ask for a waiver, and apparently Abbott is maybe going to approve that, which is ridiculous. He is not listening to Houstonians. He keeps saying that, but he is not. I do not know why, but people need home repairs. There are still people with their homes that need repairs from Hurricane Harvey, let alone the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl. So I'm encouraging that the money that is being allocated for these emergency vehicles do not be used for that and be inputted in home repair and housing, which the residents, Houstonians need. Thank you very much, and y'all have a blessed evening.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Jason Hyman. If you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Oh, sorry, there we go. My name is Jason Hyman. I am a third ward resident in District D, 20-year real estate professional and urban planner, board director for the Houston Black Real Estate Association and the Third Ward Real Estate Council. I just want to hop on and echo other sentiments around housing, that we definitely need more money put towards housing, more aligned with what the assessment actually outlines, for one. For two, when it comes to housing, I do think that we need to have some primary focus on single family affordable housing, where we are doing renovation. We should be looking at using a little bit more sustainable and or resilient practices, whether it be making some of these homes generator ready, so they're prepared maybe for the next disaster, or materials that'll be a far more resistant to disasters in the future. Where we are building new, we should be leveraging our livable places development guidance so that we can get maybe even more affordable housing by using cottage courts and other missing middle type of housing going forward. And I think last but not least, no, I think that's it. I think that's what I want to touch on. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for your comment. We'll now go back to Carolyn Rivera. If you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment. Carolyn Rivera.
Excuse me, are you able to unmute her?
Hey, are you there? This is Carolyn.
Yes.
Hey, thank you. I'm 81 years old. I'll be 82 August the 3rd. And all this technology has my head swimming, but that's okay. I came up for air. My name is Carolyn Rivera. I am, again, 81 years old. I am a volunteer for West Street Recovery and Northeast Action Collective, and I live in Settegast in Northeast Houston. We were devastated over here during Derecho and Hurricane Beryl, during the hurricane in Beryl. Many homes were destroyed. West Street Recovery was boots on the ground trying to help, but it was too much for a nonprofit and volunteers to even touch the damage that was done in this area. Still, many people need home repairs. So we are asking that the money that has been allocated for us be used for the home. We think 100 million, 120 million, as much as possible over what has been suggested should go for repairs and for our infrastructure in our area. And we still have homes that people are calling about roofs leaking and on and on and on and on. Your mind really could not comprehend the devastation that happened in this area after the tornado and Hurricane Beryl. So therefore, I agree with the other people that have spoken, and I am hoping that the people that are making these decisions will see what the voters, what the citizens, what the representatives are requesting for our people in the marginalized communities to get the help that they need to live a halfway decent life. Thank you. Over. And thank you for your patience. Over.
No problem. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Priscilla Argueta, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Hi, good evening. My name is Priscilla Argueta. I am a resident in the East End of Houston, representing Super Neighborhood 6582. My comment, I wanted to inform you guys that some technical issues. We shared and distributed your email that was sent out to us on June 11th, which holds the virtual meeting information, the links for this meeting. And a lot of our members were not able to log in. The meeting said the meeting has not started yet. And we tried the phone in, and it was just no sound or nothing, no beeping, nobody was on the line. It wasn't until we checked your Facebook account that we were able to see a different link was shared, and that's how we were able to access this meeting. So we'd like to put that on your radar. This is not the first time that technical issues have surrounded these public meetings. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, F. Wood SII. If you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment.
Thank you. My name is Fred Woods. I'm the president of Northwood Manor Civic Club. I strongly oppose the use of CDBG-DR funds for public service vehicles and homelessness programs. We approved a $277 million bond for equipment and facility improvements for police and fire departments in 2022. Additionally, I request more transparency into the funds being allocated for generators for fire stations and multi-service centers. How will these fire stations and multi-service centers be used to respond to our needs during emergencies? Which fire stations and multi-service centers will be prioritized for these generators? We need increased funding for drainage infrastructure and home repair to improve resiliency throughout Houston's most vulnerable communities. These communities are repeatedly the worst hit by disaster after disaster. And without a sizable investment with these CDBG-DR funds, recovery will continue to be unattainable. I have senior citizens living with mold and leaking roofs with and without tarps. Nearly a year after Hurricane Beryl, the last downed tree that split a house in half was removed last week. The need is overwhelming. Anything less than the majority of the funds going towards improved drainage and home repair is continued neglect. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Now I would like to turn over to the audio callers. If you are an audio caller who has not made a public comment yet, please press *6 to unmute yourself and give your comment. *6 once again. Number ending in 1790, I do see you have unmuted. Would you like to make a public comment? We are having a hard time hearing you. Once again, *6 to unmute. Okay, we do see one more hand up. Edris Katenai, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your public comment. Edris?
Hello, my name is Edris Katenai. I live in North Houston. I appreciate your time and I appreciate the presentation. Not anybody has mentioned this yet, but CenterPoint Energy had very poor planning and is probably the extremely responsible for the mass devastation that occurred from this hurricane. You know, and because of their just lack of kind of preparation and, you know, lack of communication, you know, it's they really need to be liable for many of these damages, and it's a very much an understatement of many of the speakers who were speaking before me that these precious funds should be housing related and, you know, not go towards police cars and emergency vehicles when there's already kind of year-round and non-special funding for those. But Reliant Energy, I mean, CenterPoint Energy definitely has a huge responsibility here, and we can't really let them off the hook as far as the kind of lives that were shaken up and perhaps even lives that were lost. And they definitely need to invest in, you know, improving the infrastructure and improving the outage maps. And, you know, to prevent homelessness, of course, it is housing repair that is most important, you know, supporting renters, supporting people with disabilities, supporting the unhoused. And so, you know, the utility providers definitely need to support that. You know, all of this talk about giving generators to fire departments. Again, this is a city of over 2 million people. This is not a big police department and big fire department like another speaker had said. And all of these organizations that have so much money and have so much control and power over our lives really need to invest in improving our lives. And the public kind of, you know, police and fire, you know, if those generators can be going towards community centers and libraries and things like that, that'd be great. Not all of them were open post Beryl, and that's a huge problem. I mean, even getting people to, you know, leave their house and go there, that's a problem too. So having, you know, infrastructural support in neighborhoods, that's where all the funding should go. And just trying to take care of people the best they can, and, you know, repairing and restoring and, you know, fortifying, weatherizing homes. Please allocate more funding to that. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Next up, Charles Stevenson, if you'd like to unmute yourself and provide your public comment.
Yes, how you doing? My name is Charles Stevenson. I'm currently from Chicago, Illinois, and I moved down here to Houston. As I'm listening in to the conversation with the storms, I was here for Beryl. It scared me really bad. I do see the need that there should be more money allocated to the homes, to the people in Houston, along with me, because now I live down here. I bought a house down here. This is a big place with a lot of homes. And I do thank the mayor for providing $50 million to the public, but it should be a lot more. Also, with times, I think the mayor should invest with each homes to help these people put generators in their home for emergencies when the power goes out. And I just want to say thank you for listening in, but I do believe that there should be more money allocated. If the money is set aside for home repairs, then the money should be used for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Last call for comments, public comments. All right, if there are no more public comments, we will now proceed to the Q&A segment. Thank you very much. Thank you. Back to Andrea.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you to everyone who shared their comments. We'll now move into the question and answer segment, where we will address any questions you may have about the action plan details presented today. Before we open the floor to questions, let's go over a few ground rules to ensure a smooth, productive question and answer segment. If you have not already done so and would like to ask a question, please type it in the chat. Director Nichols and other members of the HCD team will respond to your questions. If follow-up is needed, we will ask that you send your contact information to hcdplanning@houstontx.gov. Okay, Director Nichols?
Hello, so this is Amy Connolly, Chief of Staff, and we are wanting to get your questions in the chat. So if you can please put your questions in the chat, even if they need to be in Spanish, we will find a translation and get it done as soon as we can. So the idea is you put your questions in the chat, I will read them out loud, and then Director Nichols will respond. So going back through all of the chat, I've only looked at one question that's come through so far. So, and it was asked by Jeremiah Satuka. So Director Nichols, Jeremiah is asking, how can our disaster recovery plan be strengthened to directly support places of worship, addressing their storm-related property needs and enabling them to fully resume crucial community services for youth, children, and seniors?
Thank you for your question, and we are proud within the administration and within the disaster recovery teams and the homelessness teams of our work with the faith community. There's no way that every important building in Houston can have a generator. I want to make a note that the generators that we're speaking of in this plan are not the same kind of generators that Centerpoint had bought. These generators are in place and will be running and will be hardened into the buildings themselves. We, again, would like to provide everybody a generator, but that won't work. And so what we're doing is we're providing the multi-service centers and the fire stations and other places where there are capacity for disasters with those generators, so they'll be available in cooling and heating disasters. We do work closely and we need the support of the faith community, and in every disaster they've been front and center, both when we're not using when the multi-service centers are full, they're there and have stood up and help serve food and help with people who are in these facilities. So again, this is not part of this program. However, I will say we're deeply appreciative to the faith community for their support, and they certainly are a part of Houston Resilience.
Thank you, Director Nichols. So F. Wood SII is asking the next question, and it's how many generators will be purchased and for which multi-service centers?
I'm not sure I have that list. Deputy Director Sellers may have that, and he could send it in and put it in the chat. My memory is that there are 11 multi-service centers that will have these hardening generators. But I do not have that in front of me. If one of my team has that, I would love to put it in the chat.
So,
Director Nichols, I'm sitting here with Assistant Director Angela Simon, and she mentioned that there's a lot of evaluation that's going to go into the selection of the sites for generators, including the service radius of the service center and the availability of the service center to receive a generator. So there's still some analysis to do before we have a final list.
I think I heard Deputy Director Sellers also, maybe.
yeah, so the city has over 300 sites that it owns, and of that sites, about 140 of those have been deemed to be in, with over 30 of those sites being deemed critical. As Director Nichols said, that includes like wastewater lift stations. It does include multi-service centers, as was in the question. The team that's been looking at this has been working with all city department directors to determine which one should be prioritized. And the specific information around those sites should be coming forth pretty soon. Based on the conversations we've had, we do believe most, if not all, of the multi-service centers in the city could be eligible for funding under this.
One other item that I'm very excited about is as the Resilience Czar has been working on these for a year, one of the things that Angela Blanchard's put together is a program that the maintenance of these generators will be part of the contract. So again, everybody worries about, yes, you spend money on a generator. What about maintenance? And that will be part of the contracts going forward. That's our plan.
Okay, the next question comes from Pastor Deb, and she's asking, will planning work with Super Neighborhood Alliance so chapters can disseminate info about resources?
Maybe one of our staff members could answer that question.
I believe that we did reach out and send emails about our public engagement, our survey information to Super Neighborhood contacts that we were able to ascertain. So if anybody wants to be added to our list, please reach out to hcdplanning@houstontx.gov.
Okay. Director Nichols, is it okay if I go on to the next question from Pastor Deb?
Please.
She asks, if I heard correctly, there's also some winter storm funds. Will residents impacted by multiple disasters apply once or for all disasters individually?
I'm going to start the question, and then those who had more experience can help me answer. But as you are correct that $40 million from DR21 will be available for homes that were damaged in the Winter Storm Uri. And that program will begin in the next 30 days or so. There'll be a new program that goes out for DR24 that will probably commence in the spring of 2026. And that's when that program will begin. If Deputy Director Sellers, who's had great experience in this, make sure that is correct and add anything he needs to add.
Sure. So for disaster recovery funding, we're required by HUD to ensure that there is a tie back to the event. And so as Director Nichols was saying, our 2021 funding will be coming online. We're hoping by the end of this month, and we've been providing information. Applications will be soon available for that. And if you were impacted by that storm, we'll ask you to go ahead and apply for that funding. When we are to the point that we can launch a program with this money for the 2024 events, we'll have to do a new application because HUD requires us to do a tie back to that event. It's probably not much different than the type of information that we would be providing in 2021, but the difference is that it's going to be tied directly to the 2024 funding.
And Derek, I would like to add, this is Assistant Director Cedric Lassane. Each time that the person applies for a program, they will be individual applications, as we will exhaust all funds for DR21 for that event. and then any future events or disaster-related funding will be tied to that specific event. So there will be separate applications as there is separate criteria for each of the storms that is put out by HUD.
Okay, then the next question comes from Chris Jenkins. And Chris, you might need to explain a little more about it in the chat, but the question is there an escalation process to address the housing crisis?
I apologize, I'm not sure what an escalation process is, but we recognize in the city of Houston that there is a need for substantial housing, especially affordable housing for those who are very low income, 30% below AMI. We think about this every day. We're talking to the leadership and HUD. In fact, hoping that the secretary will come to Houston and we'll talk about that with him. We recognize the housing need. We recognize the need, new thinking about how we can bring more housing in Houston. I don't know exactly what the means of escalation is.
Okay, we're going to move to Neil's question. Neil Aquino asks, do the 250 police cars Mayor Whitmire said today at council we were getting from Governor Abbott, does this impact the emergency vehicle funding money in the plan?
The answer is we think it will. Those are the new items that came to fruition since the original request was made to HUD. And that's why looking at listening to the people of Houston and listening to these kinds of meetings, the mayor and our team put together this revised action plan, which puts $50 million from into housing. We haven't determined the exact place from where we'll move the money, but my guess is that a substantial piece of that will come from the lower need for police vehicles.
Okay, the next question was asked by Michael G. Davis. He asks, what was the reason you didn't simply choose to allocate the funds according to the unmet needs assessment that was administered?
That's a good question. And as I started off the conversation, think of it in the context of all of the disasters and the money that has been spent. And we felt like the urgent need that particularly was brought to bear because of the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl was for emergency generators when there's a power outage. It just became so clear during those periods. Secondly, as we saw not only during the Derecho and Hurricane Beryl, but in the recent winter storms, we saw the urgent need for those folks who are experiencing homelessness and the deaths that result when people are unhoused during winter storms and during hurricanes. And that's the reason those two areas were put on top. The next was when we looked at the results of our efforts during the Derecho and Beryl, and we saw how long it took because we did not have adequate debris repositories. When we saw that we had to find 29 extra ambulances during Beryl and the Derecho because there weren't enough ambulances and people were waiting in line at the hospitals and the ambulances were tied up. We saw that there weren't enough high water vehicles and those are the reasons we said, this is the urgent matter. Further, the indications we had from HUD were clearly to look to ways that you can spend this money more quickly and more directly on resilience. And that's the reason we came up with this plan. Finally, because we were putting $59 million into housing in the next 30 days, and looking back from 2008 till today, we had spent 80% and $775 million on housing. So we really thought this was the opportune time to look to hardening our disaster resilience. Again, remember, when we look at disaster recovery, disaster resilience, We do look back, but we need to look forward too for how it can impact the greatest number of people and the most vulnerable people.
Okay, Director Nichols, the next question comes from Cecilia Fontenot. She asks, will some of the money be used for prior built homes that were substandardly built? How will you hold the builders and inspectors accountable?
Ms. Fontenot, it is the goal of this department to make sure we have outstanding builders who do a good job and meet their warranties and guarantees. As you know, there are a number of other entities that do building during disasters, the state, the county, and other folks. We are responsible for those city builders, and we make sure that they build quality, that the standards are there. It is an ongoing effort. We have inspectors that follow every step. And you heard earlier from Cedric Lassane, who's our director in charge of single family building, and he is a stickler for detail. And our inspectors are a stickler for detail. So we will continue to make that a high priority. Like all of us, we want to measure twice and cut once. Like all of us, we want not to have to redo something that was poorly done. That's our goal. That's our promise.
And
Great,
Director,
thank you, Director Nichols. We have another question from F. Woods.
Excuse me, Mr. Lassane would like to comment. I hope I haven't said anything wrong.
no, sir,
sure.
not at all. I just would like to add that, we have over the last couple of years, we have changed our construction standards, and we have continued to evolve our processes and making sure that builders, as well as anyone that is working on these disaster recovery programs or any of our housing programs, are providing quality moving forward. And that's our goal, and we will continue that as our goal.
Okay, and coming back to the question from F. Woods, what is the breakdown of proposed safety vehicles, police, fire, high water, etc.? So wanting some more specifics about the proposed safety vehicles.
Say that one more time. Apologies.
It's okay. What is the breakdown of proposed safety vehicles? For example, police, fire, high water, etc.
Like earlier questions, there's still work to be done. There's details to be worked out. They're looking at what the needs are. And when that's done, that will be presented to the city council for approval. And all expenditures will be presented to the city council for approval. But at this time, there's not a number that I can give you because we're looking for what else happens. Maybe with the other funding that we find for these public safety programs. So we'll continue to study that and look at that. But overall, again, this is a plan. This is a draft plan, but we do not have the detail of the amounts. We knew what we thought we had back in a year ago, but again, that's still changing.
Okay, the next question is again from F. Woods. Why was a waiver needed, and which proposed expenditures did it cover?
I will turn that to either Deputy Sellers or Ms. Simon.
I can speak to the waiver. We were exploring options for a variety of activities to be covered under the plan. And this is part of what was discussed during the slideshow around obtaining technical assistance. Some of this was to determine the best way to qualify programs under the various HUD regulations. And waivers are a part of this process if we need to do something that maybe deviates from a particular regulation. Those are listed in the Federal Register notice that is published, that we have the opportunity to do so. I do know that based on where we're going, the number of waivers is probably less, but that is in order to accommodate the priorities and the urgency that Director Nichols mentioned around some of these items, and to find the best way to work within the regulatory constraints to make them happen.
Okay, let's go on to the next question from Rita Johnson. When will they start with street and drainage projects that will stop the flooding in lowland areas in the Houston area?
My understanding that this has been ongoing for decades. I see a great deal of money being spent by and work being done by the Harris County Flood Control District that directly impacts not only unincorporated Harris County, but the city of Houston. And that work is ongoing and has been ongoing for at least since 2008. And we are continuing to work on that with more regulation around building in floodplains, not only in the Houston area, but in the outlying areas, and improved drainage systems. That is an ongoing work and something very important to the city, to the county, and to the Harris County Flood Controls.
Okay, next question comes from Elaine Morales. Elaine asks, is the city getting waivers to allow those impacted by other disasters to be able to benefit from these?
Again, Mr. Sellers or Ms. Simon, I think the question is that did we get waivers? But I'm not sure.
No, we are not seeking, we have not submitted any waiver requests related to that. There are some flexibilities that may be allowed regarding those who were impacted by prior disasters, but we have not sought any direct waivers.
Okay, next question comes from Edris Kotani. He asks, so applications for home repair related to DR24 Beryl won't be available until spring 2026?
You know, again, it is frustrating that it takes such a long time to do this. It's frustrating to me, and we will take this up with the HUD secretary when he hopefully comes to Houston. We had the winter storm Uri 21 that's just having the money being used. Once you get a disaster, then there is HUD will make some review of that disaster, and then there is a request and that the city will make after looking at its number about what we need for that disaster. Also during this time, Congress must allocate actual funding to the disaster. That was one of the things that took us so long for DR21. Then the HUD puts out new regulations, and that took a long time and continues to take a long time. And we think that we can get the actual funds and late fall, early winter, November, December of this year. And then we have to make sure we have our rules in place that we go out and put the best contractors up and take on that funding. That's the reason we think it will be in the springtime. We wish we could do it quicker. We're planning on working to do it quicker, but our experience is this takes this kind of time to go through all the necessary hoops with HUD, with the city, with city council. It takes this kind of time. Deputy Director Sellers, who's worked with these disasters since I think 20 years or more, maybe you have some input as to this and the frustrations that have been there.
Yeah, just we're going to be submitting this summer the action plan to HUD for approval, and they're going to have 45 days to review and provide feedback to us. We expect that to happen sometime maybe in October, early October, hopefully. And then we sign grant agreements with HUD sometime 30 to 45 days after that. That's when funding first becomes available. The HUD requires that we write program guidelines for each of these programs, and we'll be submitting that to City Council for approval. That'll be another opportunity for the public to engage as well as part of that process. And as Director Nichols says, we'll also have to be doing procurement process to find construction contractors specifically on these home repair programs. And that process always takes longer than it should. But as Assistant Director Lassane says, we are looking for quality construction contractors that can do this work. While it said spring 2026, we are going to try to get this done as quickly as possible. We're going to try to make this not linear, but overlap timelines as much as we can. But we have to do some, get some front end feedback from HUD to ensure that we will be approved for what the programs that we outline. But our expectation, our goal will be working the process and going ahead and moving forward with drafting some of these guidelines, working with strategic procurement for the city so that we can start working towards the RFPs we need to get construction contractors in line so that we can launch these programs as quickly as possible.
Okay, ready for next question?
Absolutely.
Okay, F. Woods asks, could any funds be used for trash debris removal vehicles that can also be used during non-emergencies for illegal dumping and or heavy trash / tree waste pickup? Did you get that?
Yes, I did. It's a very interesting comment. And again, we in these fundings, we are looking at different ways of using vehicles in times that they're not disasters. And I will take that into consideration. It's a very interesting comment. And again, I'm sure the folks in Public Works will be looking at this also.
F. Woods next asks, how can the public keep up with the frequent revisions to the proposed action plan budget? Is there somewhere online that will be updated regularly or someone we can contact?
The answer is yes, there is somewhere online, and I'll turn that over to Ms. Simon or Ms. Johnson if they have that exact answer. Or
Yes, currently the draft action plan that was posted for public comment is on our website. The public comment period will close as discussed on June 22nd. We will be in the final revisions of the plan towards submission to HUD. Unfortunately, there will not be an opportunity other than the presentation at the Budget and Fiscal Affairs meeting on the 8th of June. July, for presentation of the budget changes there, but the plan will be posted once it's submitted to HUD and finalized. There's just not enough time left in the timeline for that.
Okay, ready for the next question,
Absolutely.
Director Nichols? How
Yes.
did you arrive at the numbers being presented if there aren't additional details for the quantities being proposed?
Thank you. Again, we arrived at them doing the same thing that you would do when you make a budget. And it does have some quantities in there when we put the original budget together. But what we're doing at this point is we're really asking, and we will need the kind of flexibility to make sure in each of these programs, we will know what the immediate need is. The reason I'm comfortable doing that and see it as a very transparent process is that we will be before City Council, and you'll see these details as they're approved by City Council before they're approved. And there will be, just like we had this morning, opportunities for citizens to voice their opinion. So again, as each program opens up, there are these opportunities for individuals to voice their opinions. And as you've seen as early as this morning, your leadership is listening.
Okay, next question comes from Priscilla Argueta. She asks, by what authority can Mayor Whitmire alter the disaster fund amount? And what methodology, if any, did he use to determine the revised amount?
As mayor and as mayor and as the CEO of the city, he and our team and his leadership team came together to discuss what the different alternatives were. And we showed him a variety of different alternatives. And the one that looked best to him as the mayor and to his leadership team and as my team who have really expertise in this area, the $50 million was the right number, the fair number, and the effective number to get what we wanted and to have an adequate programs for housing. To remember again that as mayor, he presents the ordinances and the city council must approve this budget. Sometime, and I think we talked about in mid-July, the city council will take this budget under consideration and approve it. They could amend it. There's all sort of things that go on, but they will approve it, and hopefully they'll approve it. And then we take it to Housing and Urban Development, and they have to approve our action plan. Once approved, we again put it in action, begin to implement it, and the individual programs go back to city council for their approval. Again, highly transparent, highly involved. Your city is a city that takes in consideration what the public needs and wants. But as I started the conversation, there is significant need and limited funding. And that's true over and over again. And I will, as I look at the work that our department does, the city council does, as the mayor does, making these difficult decisions, but making the right decisions is very important. In the end, it's hard to make everyone happy because there is such a significant need across the city, and there's very limited funding, and that's why you have to make these hard decisions. One of the things it's a little frustrating, but I try to wake up every morning with a sense of gratitude instead of a sense of irritation. And my gratitude is that HUD and the federal government came forward with $314 million for the city of Houston, much more than our other entities in our area. And I think we should be grateful for that and excited about that. Yes, it is a limited amount of money, but we have to make these decisions.
Okay, Director Nichols, we have two more questions. Tiffany Hogue is asking, just to repeat, revised plan will be presented to BFA on July 8th. Is the city council vote on action plan still slated for next week?
The answer is, as far as I know, we have not committed to these dates, but assuming that the revised plan is presented to BFA and approved on July 8th, we will then go to city council on, excuse me, I had that in front of me, on July 8th, I'm sorry, July 23rd or July 30th. And the reason it's important to do it quickly is we then need to meet our HUD deadline for submission.
Okay, last question comes from Jason Hyman. How much more will be allocated for housing based on public comments?
At this time, the number that's allocated to housing, and that includes multifamily housing, it includes repair and reconstruction of houses damaged, single family houses, is a total of $50 million. It's my expectation that will continue to be the right number. But again, we will continue to listen and continue to make changes if necessary. But I think it's $50 million, and that's a good number, especially when you add in the $59 million that will go out in the next 30 to 60 days from DR 21 and DR 17.
Okay, Director Nichols, one last question from Elaine Morales. She asks, but the head deadline was July 22nd, and I think she's relating to the new change in dates.
So we will go. In fact, I've just signed a letter after the mayor made the announcement today to get a new submission deadline, which we expect will be something like August 19th. But it obviously will be later, and we'll wait for approval from HUD. Have asked for that extension already.
Okay, last call for any comments and I'm sorry, any questions. I want to make sure you ask questions in the chat. Last call, and if you need to make them in Spanish, we have translation available. So last call for questions. Okay, Edris asked one question. Will you please force Centerpoint to contribute millions to disaster recovery? I think that's more of a comment, but Mike, do you want to answer that question?
I will do this. I will commit that I will try to meet with Centerpoint and work with them. My understanding is my partner, Angela Blanchard, who oversees resilience, is talking to them on an ongoing basis. I know that the extent of the actual use and purchases of generators extends far beyond the $150 million in this plan. And some of it will come from contributions from corporations. I know that's ongoing. I do not have any details on that. But yes, we know that Centerpoint plays an important role in our city and is important to assure us that we have good electricity going forward, even in the area of disaster, and they're up more quickly than we were during past disasters.
Okay, I think that wraps up all of our questions. Thank you all so much for submitting such great questions. We really appreciate it.
I think we're now turning it over to Andrea.
Thank you so much, Director Nichols. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, division managers and department heads. We sincerely appreciate you. And most importantly, we want to thank everyone from the various communities and neighborhoods and representatives as well as stakeholders for tuning in tonight. We're going to wrap up with a few final announcements, okay? Before we conclude, let's review how to submit additional public comments. A public notice was published on May 23rd, 2025. In addition, a draft copy of the action plan for disaster recovery, the 2024 Derecho and Hurricane Beryl was posted to the city's disaster recovery website. That address is houstontx.gov/HCD recovery on that date. The city will be accepting public comments, as mentioned earlier, through June 22nd, 2025. These can be submitted by mail, email, or voicemail. Your feedback is essential to shaping the final plan. We also want to encourage you to take our survey that was mentioned earlier in my presentation. The resident and the agency survey can be found on our website. For those of you that are stakeholders, we encourage you to disseminate that to various communities that you share partnerships with, as well as our residents to take the resident survey. For more information or simply just to stay in touch, I have listed our address, our phone number, and our website, which has the option to sign up for email updates. I heard a lot of you saying that you quite possibly didn't know about the meetings in different avenues. Please sign up for our email updates. We keep our website updated with the latest up-to-date information. Or please follow and like us on social media platforms, just like tonight. Facebook was live streamed. X, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn. To get this presentation as well as the slide deck, it will be posted online later this week. I will now turn it over to Director Nichols for any final remarks. Director Nichols?
I love Houston, Texas, and the reason I love Houston, Texas is our engaged citizens. We are not wallflowers. We have strong feelings, but we're working together as a team. Your city government, I know it's sometimes frustrating for you who are citizens, but we work very hard and work for your best benefit. It's a pleasure to be a public servant here, and I think our whole staff knows that. And we wish we could fill everybody's wish, but we have to make those hard decisions so that going forward, during that next disaster, which we wish would never come, but it's inevitable, we would have the right tools, the right ambulances, the right high water vehicles, the generators that we need. enough places to go if there's not when there is disaster, like our multi-service centers. These are things that we know are necessary, and we also want to help as many people who were harmed by these disasters who didn't have insurance or weren't already helped by FEMA. It's a big ask, but with limited funds, we will make it go as far as possible. Thank you all for your time, attention, and participation. We appreciate your continued engagement in helping shape a stronger, more resilient future for our community. This concludes our meeting. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, team. And then again, great job. These are many hours listening, but they're important for the city. Thanks so much.
And thank you, Director Nichols. This concludes our meeting.